Now, world leaders have responded with mixed reactions to the U.S. actions, which involved a large-scale strike on Venezuela on Saturday, where Maduro and his wife were captured by U.S. forces and removed from the country. Now, in an initial response, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said his government would shed no tears before the end of Maduro's regime. Neighboring Latin American countries condemned the actions, as did Venezuela's long-term allies, Russia and China. Now, China said it was deeply shocked and strongly condemns the use of force against a sovereign country and its president. Russia accused the U.S. of committing an act of armed aggression, while Iran called the strikes a flagrant violation of the country's national sovereignty. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in Brazil says the actions cross an unacceptable line, adding attacking countries in flagrant violation of international law is the first step towards a world of violence, chaos, and instability. Joining us from the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, is a Venezuelan journalist. We also have for this conversation Tabenyang Etchu, a geopolitical analyst in Washington. Now, our Venezuelan journalist chose to be anonymous, and so that's the way we're going to have the conversation. So we're going to start off with the journalist in Caracas, whom we cannot name at this point due to the state of affairs in his country. But can you quickly tell us what's the mood in Caracas and other cities around you?
Hello, everybody. Well, the state in Caracas right now is silence. Everybody is at home, except for some cases that people are going to groceries to supply themselves for these moments of uncertainty. Because we don't know what's gonna happen next. Some people are afraid about colectivos, that are some people armed by the Maduro regime to oppress the people here in Caracas. So they are taking safety measures and they're staying at home right now. So we just have to wait and see what will happen next.
All right, let me switch to you now for a moment, Dr. Etchu. The past 24 hours have witnessed a flurry of reactions from around the world, but for many, it's like the accuser about to serve justice. Tell me, how is America morally and legally empowered to do what they have just done to Venezuela?
For keen observers, I don't think it was about the morality of the whole thing. It's about economic interest. So at the end of the day, you would always have a face as if these actions are because of a moral obligation or legally binding to some of these international actors. But the action that has been taken by the U.S., and U.S. not even the first, you see the same thing that Russia did, see the same thing that Israel did the other day by unilaterally recognizing Somaliland, you would begin to understand that might is slowly replacing the moral standards or what is right. So that is where we are right now. I don't think anybody is going to begin to judge this on the basis of legality, because the fact itself that the U.S. decided to go against the United Nations Charter is already legally challenged. So there are so many serious legal issues that are concerned that would need to be addressed in the forthcoming days. And Maduro right now within the U.S., it is going to also play out in the U.S. Legal system. Was the action legal? That is something that is going to play out in the coming days.
Well, let me come back to you, Venezuelan journalist. The Supreme Court has named Vice President Rodriguez as acting president, although she has made remarks to the effect that Maduro is the only president. But what whereabouts and what has she been doing since she was, of course, named as the acting president?
Well, at the moment of the recording, she hasn't appeared publicly, so there is no much information. That what we know is that the Supreme Court has named her as a temporary vice president. And we have to remember that in Venezuela, the last election in 2024 were reached up for the Venezuelan people perspective. So she has not a legitimate power at the moment, but they are exerting the power right now. So she will be a central piece for a possible transition here in Caracas.
All right, let me come back to you, Tabenyang. The African Union has said sovereignty is sacrosanct. It appears that they can't do more than issue that statement. What should Africa's true response have been, at least in the interest of the global South?
You just stated the response. What else can they do? The institution is spineless, or they are toothless bulldog. And for me, even the very sterile statement that they made, reaffirming its commitment to the fundamental principles of international law, including respect for the sovereignty of states and its territorial integrity, it is just really, it's worthless. And it is double-faced because the African Union itself was complicit when the US, the same US and its NATO allies bombed and killed Gaddafi, invaded Gaddafi. And last month, Nigeria, your own country, sent warplanes to Benin to sustain and maintain the democratic dictator in Benin. Would that also be classified as interference in the internal institutions or territorial integrities of other member states? So the African Union has no moral grounds to lecture anybody on this case. And besides, there is really nothing they can do. They are a spineless organization.
All right, let me come back to you, Venezuelan journalist. Now, yesterday during President Trump's news conference, he stated that U.S. is more than willing to work with the vice president, and he has also he made it clear that she'll be having conversations with the Secretary of State, that's Marco Rubio, stating that she's willing to cooperate with the United States of America. Do you think that's the case?
Well, at the moment, there is some tension because moments later, the vice president called again that Nicolás Maduro was abducted by the United States, and she proclaimed that he has to be returned to Venezuela. So it's a direct contrast for what the Trump administration said. So we have to wait and see, because Delcy Rodriguez haven't appeared again since then, since yesterday at 3 p.m. In the local hour here in Caracas. Some politicians are saying that she right now is doing some negotiations between the focal points of focal powers between the Maduro regimes right now and the United States, but the consequences of the results are not clear.
All right, let me come back to you, Tabenyang. Now, in the past, the Bush administration attempted to oust the ouster of Hugo Chavez without success, and that's because the people rallied behind him. But for Chavez, it seems different. But for Maduro, it looks like it's a different ballgame. Do you think perhaps the way the people feel about President Maduro perhaps made this easier for the United States to carry out the operation?
Absolutely. And his arrogance since the 2024 presidential elections that the opposition claim with really credible results that they won, I think, by 58%. And he forcibly used the military apparatus to stay in power. And millions of Venezuelans had flee out of the country because of the heavy-handed nature of the Maduro regime. So yes, he has some sizable support inside Venezuela, but majority of the people really loathed him. They did not like him. So there's a huge difference. And we should be mindful that this is not even the first time that the US is doing this. In 1989, there was a forcible invasion of Panama, and they took out Noriega. You could see that the issues about the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of states really sometimes do not stand in the way of the U.S. when they are determined to achieve their ultimate goal, influence and control. And that is what is happening in Venezuela. There is tepid reactions across the region. You have, like you stated, from Brazil, some of the socialist countries, Cuba, as expected. Argentina is showing support given that they are aligned with Trump. But generally, Maduro is a different kind of animal or beast from Chavez, who was greatly loved by the people.
Let me come back to you, Venezuelan journalist. Now, President Trump has said that the U.S. will run Venezuela during a transition period. What does that signal about, Washington's intentions for the country's government?
Oh, well, right now it's a lot of tension because some Venezuelans didn't perceive this kind of transition per se. What I'm meaning by that, they thought that when the intervention, the strikes ended, that Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo González Urrutia, two figures of the Venezuelan opposition, will take the power right away. But this is not the case. So the tension is very palpable. We don't know how much this period will last. Everything is accountable for at least 3 people in the government right now. Diosdado Cabello, the Minister of Internal Relationships, Jorge Rodriguez, the President of the Parliament in Venezuela, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, the Ministry of Defense, and Delcy Rodriguez herself.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to take a pause on this conversation right now as we go on a quick break. When we return, we'll continue conversations as regards U.S. and Venezuela feud. We'll be right back. And thanks for staying with us. It's still news now on News Central Television. And I was having a conversation with our anonymous Venezuelan journalist, Tabenyang. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being patient with us. Now, let me come to you, Tabenyang. Oil appears central to U.S. plans. How significant is Venezuela's oil sector in shaping this intervention, and what are the potential consequences?
To be very honest, U.S. has a history with Venezuela as far as the oil is concerned. So this is going to be significant. Venezuela has accused the U.S. of wanting to steal its oil reserves, which are, by all proven information, the largest in the world. And this allegation, you can point to it that it was proven when the U.S. seized some of its oil tankers last month. But if you go back to, I think, 1976 or so, when Venezuela nationalized its oil industry, the U.S. had felt, justly or unjustly, that it had the short end of the bargain because a lot of the investments and both human and capital investment from the U.S. oil industry were confiscated by the Venezuelan government. So it is significant, and I think Trump has not hidden his desire to take back those resources. So there's an eye on the oil industry in Venezuela. And I think that could also reverberate across the globe. Would there be more production? Would the U.S. Oil companies get back into Venezuela and get a foothold to improve production? Is that going to affect the oil prices? Yes, in the short term, there might be the fluctuations that are really associated with the oil industry, but would they be stabilized if things are not brought back quickly to normalcy in Caracas?
Coming to you now, a Venezuelan journalist. What should we expect in the coming days that should actually happen in Venezuela, especially now that the Supreme Court has recognized Vice President Rodriguez as the acting president of Venezuela?
Oh, well, for the last days, there are at least three scenarios that we can predict. The first one, it will be that the Maduro's regime will try to preserve the status quo as them of the de facto power. So they will try to buy more time. They already do that with the court saying that Delcy Rodriguez is the de facto presidential presidential place, and they will try to buy as much time as possible to create some mechanisms and state in power via force or by diplomatic measurements, trying to stop the Maduro's Ancilia judgment. Another a scenario could be that Trump, like he said in his previous press release, that he will bomb again in Caracas, this time to attack directly at the rest of the Maduro's regime, especially Delcy Rodriguez, Jorge Rodriguez, Vladimir Padrino López, and Diosdado Cabello, to create more pressure to resign and have another way of transition in the power. And the last is that DLC creates a platform for a quick transition, and then we have to get or new elections here in Venezuela, or Edmundo González Urrutia, one of the candidates that the Venezuelan opposition claimed that he won. The Venezuelan opposition have a lot of trust in him, that they vote for him, will return to Venezuela, and they create a new era of the politics here in Venezuela.
All right, let me come to you, Tabenyang. Giving China's strong condemnation of the U.S. action as a violation of international law and Venezuelan sovereignty, alongside criticisms from, of course, France and concern from the United Nations, what real impact could this international backlash have on U.S. actions and the situation in Venezuela?
If you look at it, and if a lot of people who have been following U.S. politics, certainly you're going to have the hawks within the administration celebrating the removal of Maduro, but you also going to have voices, particularly from the Democratic bench, indicating the legality and the complex issues surrounding either taking over Venezuela and then running it as President Trump has said. Could we see a domino effect? Could China also realize that I can go into Taiwan, take out the president and then indicate to the world that I'm going to run Taiwan until such a time that I believe that it is ready for a transition that could potentially point towards favorability towards China. So I want our people to understand that the flagrant violation of national sovereignty and territorial integrity in Venezuela has actually turned international law and national sovereignty on its head. It appears that those concepts are now a relic, and these could have far more reaching consequential effects. But the uncomfortable truth that is often rejected by naive globalists and pseudo-nationalists is that the United States remains the most powerful actor in the international system, militarily, politically, and economically. This is not a moral judgment, but this is a fact. And a lot of this noise that you're hearing coming around, you would not see this noise a week or two down the road. It would end in a lot of these international organizations like the UN and People Charter, but the US has forcefully acted, and this is not the first time. So you're getting into a phase in history where might replaces right, and the most powerful are the ones that are going to dictate what is acceptable to them as far as international law is concerned. It's a pick and choose game that we're getting into. If you see countries like Cameroon that also has the same situation with disputed elections, is Trump going to go in there, or Nigeria is going to go in there and say, hey, we do not accept a 92-year-old as a winner of a presidential election that is hotly contested, and we're going to take him out? Is this what the world is going to be? So I think that is why you have a lot of concerns across most capitals of the world. But unfortunately, the U.S. position as the global superpower, both economically, politically, and militarily, makes it very difficult for anybody to muster any kind of response. Here, the weak statement that came out from the British, even the statement from France, for you to come in and say, hey, we respect the concept of international law, they have already violated it. What are the actions that are supposed to be taken to restore that concept of international law? All of these sterile statements are not good enough. Actions need to be taken, but unfortunately, the world is limited as far as the U.S. is concerned.
Gentlemen, I must thank you both for having this conversation with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right.